Hey everyone, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. We got a great guest. He's a second time returning person here, Mr. Vance Morris. I asked him to come in here because Vance has three companies, also has a consulting company, and he's in the home services business with three different businesses. And we're talking about the hidden gold in follow-ups and how to stand out and close more sales from follow-up, from a couple of different perspectives. One, we're talking from how do you re-engage clients and get them to buy more, and keep in touch with them and keep top of mind with them, which most people think about, okay, they bought something from me, I should keep in touch with them, which most companies don't do a really good job at. But we're also talking about follow-up from a perspective of prospecting and the marketing side, which a lot of people don't even consider when they're going through that process. So let's go talk to Vance in a moment. By the way, if you're interested in more follow-up, we run a masterclass, and the masterclass is at ceosalesstrategies.com/stop the leak. That's ceosalesstrategies.com/stop the leak. We run these monthly. They're 90 minutes. You'll learn a lot about follow-up. Come to it. I highly recommend. Let's go talk to Vance. Get a notepad, paper, pen, whatever, digital tab. Write down notes on this because this is a great episode, and we're pulling from different experiences with large companies, small companies, and all in between on how you can get more revenue coming out of your business by just using the power of follow-up. Here we go. Hey, Vance, welcome back to the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. For those of you who are wondering, Vance is a return person. We don't have many that we have back on, but our first episode was so amazing. I wanted to bring you back on. So thanks for being here again.
I appreciate it, Doug. We're going to have some fun today, I think.
Yeah. We're talking about one of my favorite subjects, right? We're talking about the hidden gold in follow-up, how to stand up, from your competitors and, make more sales using follow-up. So why don't you give people your background if they hadn't heard the previous?
Sure thing. Yeah. So spent a decade working for the Mouse down in Orlando. Great place to work, especially if you're a young male. Orlando, beaches, babes, bars. I mean, what could go wrong? Spent another decade working for a couple other corporate food servicey types. Had some pretty high profile jobs. Director of catering for the Smithsonian Museum System. Had some pretty big clients when I was in corporate food service. The White House, NASA, IRS. No, people did not ask me to poison the food at the IRS, although that, certainly had crossed some people's minds, I'm sure. But as most entrepreneurs, I make a lousy employee. I just don't like to be told what to do. So I went out on my own. Currently, I have three home service businesses that I own here in Maryland. So it kind of gives me street cred when I'm talking about marketing, when I'm talking about sales or customer experience, because everything I talk about, I have done in those very commoditized businesses. I have a mold remediation company, a oriental rug washing facility, and a carpet cleaning company. And now I consult and coach small businesses on how to command premium pricing through creating experiences, and really primarily through customer retention, because so many businesses really forget that it is their job to remind the customers why we exist, and it's not the customer's job to remember us.
Yeah, and I mean, the old adage, it costs X amount more to sell a new customer than it does an existing customer, right? And so our profit's higher. It's a much easier sale because they already know us.
Yeah.
But so many people just drop the ball on staying in touch with people and keeping them top of mind, and keeping our relationship top of mind. Why do you think that happens?
It's not sexy. And we think we think that there's some vanity probably, that if we just do a good job, people should remember us. And I hate to break it to people that that is certainly not the case. Doing a good job these days, I mean, maybe 100 years ago when there was less people in the marketplace and you were the only shoe shine guy or the only bakery in town, sure. But now that there are hundreds and hundreds of people in your city that do the same thing, no, doing a good job is just entry into the marketplace.
Yeah.
We expect you to do a good job. Beyond that, now you need to follow up and market and do what you can to create and maintain emotional connections with your customers so that they do you stay top of mind for with them. Um, and and going back to what I originally said about being sexy, I mean, if you're a business owner and you on one of your Flakebook feeds or LinkedIn feeds or whatever, you don't see ads for people helping with customer retention. You see people, oh, I'll get you 10,000 likes for $14. I'll get you, all these leads and yada, yada, yada. It's all the stuff that you just chase, the squirrels here and there. And so to me, it's just, I will admit you need a certain amount of new customers if you're going to grow. I get that. But if you want to grow profitably, you've got to be focusing on retaining the customers you have, because that's only going to bring down your cost of acquisition because your referrals are going to go through the roof because you've got this customer retention system in place. As you said, your existing customers are easier to sell to. They're easier to try out new products or services on. They already know, like, and trust you. Why we don't spend more time on them, I don't know, but that's where the easy money is.
Yeah, it's funny because it's one of the first places that I attack when I go to a company and they say, I want to raise my revenue. It's like, well, let's talk to your dormant buyers, right? And we get an easy lift out of it every single time.
Yeah.
And the thing that when you said something like super important, it's about creating and maintaining emotional connections with the people who bought from us. And if people are not building relationships with the people that they've sold to, then they're missing out on what every business owner I've ever talked to wants, which is recurring income, recurring business.
Yep.
And so without maintaining that creation and the momentum of that relationship, without maintaining that through time, it's going to happen haphazardly. It's like, well, maybe they remember, maybe they don't. But the challenge comes in because you said there are way more competitors now than there used to be. Just, proliferation of the internet has done that alone. That we now have new introductory relationships coming into our lives consistently, continually.
Right.
I mean, geez, I don't know how many SEO ads you get in your email, but I mean, I get 3 to 5 new ones a week
Yeah,
coming
at
into
least.
my email, right? Now, I want to illustrate it with that because it's like, all right, I have somebody doing my SEO, but they do SEO, and then if I don't hear from them for a long period of time, then something new pops in and it's like, oh, what's this shiny new little object that might be coming in? And that's just enough opening for the competitor to get their foot in the door, so to speak.
Yep.
And I might find something better at that point. So, it's our responsibility as the seller to maintain the relationship. And it drives me crazy, Vance, because I know if they just did this one thing, that their revenue is increased by 5 to 20% on average.
Easy.
Throughout the process. But I agree with you. It's not sexy, right? I mean, it's not, I think you said it was beaches, babes, and bars or something in the beginning, right? it's not that, right? It's
No,
like self-parking. It's like
right. But but it's vital. Yeah, and you say get your foot in the door. I mean, if you have a retention system, you've got to be intentional about it. I mean, it can't, as you said, haphazard. You've got to, on a weekly basis, be in front of your current customers, whether they buy from you infrequently, like maybe a HVAC company, or they only need your product. If it's shampoo, they only need your product every 2 months. You still need to be in front of them at least weekly, because somebody's going to pop an ad in front of them for a new shampoo, that, oh, well, maybe that one will work better than this one.
yeah,
Or with the HVAC company, well, you not only need them every 18 or 24 months. Well, what are you doing between services to stay top of mind, so that when it's time for them to need you again, are they immediately using you because you've been sending them postcards and flyers and emails, or are they going to Google because they can't remember your name?
right.
You know,
Yeah,
and that's the problem. And we talked about cost. I mean, real quickly, when I talk to my customers, or excuse me, my clients, the ones that I'm consulting with, I ask them, I mean, do you know what it costs to get a new client in the front door? Do you know your customer acquisition cost? Most of them have no
no
idea.
idea. Yeah.
They have no idea. And when I tell them, they're like, holy crap. So, like, for my carpet cleaning business, I just got the numbers for April. It was $142 to get a new customer in the front door. $142. Now my minimum charge is $199.
Right.
That leaves me what, $57 to pay my technician, put gas in the van, insurance, rent, all that other stuff. I'm going in the red.
Yep.
I'm going negative on that customer if they only do the minimum,
Right.
but I'm going to negative. Now I know my competitors have the same costs. They're all doing pay-per-click, they're all doing Flakebook ads, et cetera, et cetera. But I know that I'm going to make a butt ton more money on the second cleaning because I have a robust customer retention system in place. And that $140 that I spent to get the customer, I never have to spend again. It only cost me $25 a year to retain the customer. So I'm immediately 120 some odd dollars more profitable the second time I clean for them. And when you put those kinds of numbers in front of business owners, they immediately get it. And they're like, oh, crap. I mean, really? And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, it's I just had this conversation yesterday with someone. It's uncanny we're having I just I'm like, people don't figure in their initial goal. One of the big challenges people have when they're trying to say, well, I want to do X dollars and I want to net X dollars out of that. They don't factor in things like churn, expenses, refunds, all of those numbers into their numbers. And so let's say that, on the low end, it's 25%. And they calculate, hey, I got to do 100 sales to hit my number. Well, not really. You got to do 125 to actually hit that number. And so what we're talking about is hitting that number a lot easier every single year, because we all know it's expensive upfront to acquire the client. And then after that, like with the carpet cleaning, for example, let's say they do an annual or biannual carpet cleaning with you. You've already got the expense done on the front end.
Yep.
And that now you have cost of goods and things like that continue.
Right.
But it's more, far more fixed than anything. So you're now making profit on the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth cleaning. And that's where you can expand the sale. You can offer them certain other things, or, get a new client out of it for literally free or low cost as a referral. Or all of these things can expand out from creating that weekly connection, that monthly connection, whatever it's going to be for the phase for the person. So Let's talk about creating that weekly connection, because some people say this to me all the time. Well, I send a newsletter, Doug, and I'm like, you really think they're reading your newsletter? Like, let me guess, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Time Magazine, all these things, podcasts, this,
Yep.
it's just your weekly newsletter just stands out, right? And
Yep.
it's like,
Well, you've got to, I mean, I am media agnostic. So whether it's electronic or in the mail or FedEx or however you need to get your message out there, I think it needs to be a mix because people consume things differently.
yeah,
So the retention system that I use both for myself and what I encourage my clients to use is a mix of online and offline. And it's a mix of creating those emotional connections, and it's a mix of offering promotions and sales. Because if the only time you ever hear from a vendor or a business is when they want to sell you something, well, that's not a relationship. That's just transactions.
right.
So I do a newsletter, but it is in the mail, real paper, and it's sent monthly. The design of it is really kind of like Reader's Digest Light. It is all entertainment, little stuff in there about, hey, do you have a friend or neighbor, some referability stuff, but it's all designed to create the emotional connections. I don't know if I've told you this, I shamelessly use my children in my marketing. Um, and so when my daughter was growing, she's 17 now, but when my daughter was growing up, she did ballet. And I would take the obligatory picture of her in her tutu every year at the recital, and I would put that in my newsletter. And one year when she was, I don't know, 10 or 11 years old, we're in the grocery store, and this lady comes running up to us, and they're like, Emma, how was your recital? And we're looking at each other like we're ready to go hide in the frozen food section. And I had to think, you know what? This lady is a customer. I've created an emotional connection with her and thousands of people just like her.
Right.
She's never leaving me. She knows my daughter's name. She knows my daughter does ballet, all through a monthly newsletter. Now, I'm not saying you got to use your kids. That's fine. If you like fishing or bowling or whatever, use something from your past, your history, your personality, and try to create those connections in a newsletter. And then, first and foremost, don't be boring. That's like marketing sin number one is being boring. Try to be entertaining. The number one column or piece in my newsletter is stupid criminal stories. I kid you not, stupid criminal stories. People get a kick out of this thing. I've been doing this now, this newsletter going on 16 years. 1 month, I didn't put stupid criminal stories in there. I figured, oh, okay, I've been doing this for a few years. I'm going to change it up and do something. I got more. This also proves that people are reading the newsletter.
That's true.
I got more in my office saying, "Where's the stupid criminal stories?" I'm like, okay, we'll never do that again. But the newsletter is the piece that's designed to create those connections. And then I also, if you want, now we also need to sell stuff, so we send a monthly postcard that has the promotion of the month in it. Now, for every business, maybe you don't need to do a monthly promotion. I mean, if you're B2B and you sell, I don't know, pumps or HVAC units, okay, maybe you don't need to have a promotion every month, but you can still use a postcard for something else. Then we do a weekly email. It's short, and it's a combination of the newsletter and the postcard. So you got a little bit of entertainment. And then in the PS, you have your offer or your promotion of the month. So between online and offline, you're tagging people once a week in different modes, different methods, and you stay top of mind. And it's that simple.
A lot of people, when they talk to me about follow-up, they talk to me, because I built a personalized, meaningful, relevant, automated SaaS follow-up process, right? And they're like, how much is too much? Like how much follow-up is too much? They're like, I don't want to seem pushy. I don't want to seem right. So I'm hearing you say once a week, nobody's complaining, right?
But you
Because
can't be always selling. That's when people get annoyed.
yeah,
If you show up in the mailbox and you are entertaining and you're telling little stories about yourself, and then, oh, by the way, we're having a special on the flux capacitor this week,
right.
that's fun.
Yeah.
But if you're always having a special on the flux capacitor and that's all you're pounding on them every day of every week, yeah, that's stupid. And yes, people will unsubscribe and they will tell you to go away.
Yeah. Yeah, it's statistics clearly show that people are expecting follow-up from when they do a transaction, and they're expecting it to be relatively frequent, and they're expecting it to be packed with helpful information and value, not just trying to push them to make the next sale. But so many people, and you and I both know this, Vance, because we get these things all the time. I mean, I have one gentleman, it's like every 3 days I have a junk mail email that it goes
Oh,
to,
yeah.
so I see it, but it's like every 3 days, he's like, new promotion, new special, new this, new that, right? And there's no relationship built on that except kind of an icky one, I guess, really, when it comes down to it, right? But what I'm hearing you say is you're creating these emotional and connections to really bring them into how they feel as they're part of a community or part of your family, where this lady was coming up and going, Emma, how is this going? Right. I mean, she's in your family at this point. And why do you think people don't use personalized stuff like, you used Emma? I used to bring Rebecca and Jacqueline into my stuff all the time, right?
Right.
Until they got to be a little older and they're like, Dad, this is kind of like knock it off right now. But but there are people who call and want to talk to Rebecca who don't want to talk to me, right? Because they're like, I've been talking with Rebecca for 12 years, right? And she's here. So the why do you think people don't use more of their own personal backstories and highlight those things? Because what I have found is the stuff that we're usually talking about, you and I, on our communication, is usually what people are going through.
Right.
And so, but people feel they shouldn't share. And so is this like scripting from a young age, like children are to be seen but not heard, or whatever, all these things that, what do you think is the cause?
I think there's a couple of things. I think first and foremost, business owners look to the big guys and say, well, that's how marketing should be done. They look to Goodyear or Disney or Apple,
Yeah.
and I just did a piece on Goodyear blimp advertising. And they say, oh, we should just be able to put our logo up and fly it over a stadium, and people should buy our stuff. And well, I mean, we don't know anything about any of the employees at Goodyear, so why should anybody know anything about me? And that's great for a big company, but I would hazard a guess. I would bet my pay for the next 10 years that if you went up to an executive at Goodyear and you said, hey, at the Baltimore Ravens game last week, when you flew that blimp over the stadium, how many tires did you sell? They have no flipping idea. They
Yeah.
couldn't tell you how many tires were sold because that blimp was over the stadium. As small business owners, we can't afford that. We need to know how many tires we sold because of an ad that we placed.
Right.
We got to know, because we don't have an infinite budget to throw out there and fly a blimp and hope to God we sell something.
Right.
We just don't have it. So I think there's that, in that we're looking at the big companies and we're trying to imitate them, which is just, it's a fool's errand and you're going to go broke doing it. The other thing I think is along the similar lines is what I call kind of like marketing incest. We're looking at what everybody else is doing in our market and we do the same. Like if you remember when there was yellow pages, and I'll never forget this. I'll look and like every home service company would have a picture of their van in the yellow pages ad. So if you were a plumber, an electrician, a carpet cleaner, HVAC, every single one of those ads had a picture of the van. Now tell me, what does a van have to do with plumbing, HVAC, or carpet cleaning? We assume you're going to get to the house somehow.
Right.
You really need a van to tell us? It's wasted ad space. So if you looked at any of my Yellow Pages ad, the first thing I did is I looked at what everybody else was doing, and I did the opposite. There's no van in any of my in any of my ads because it took up valuable space for me to put either a testimonial or some other kind of copy. But so look at what other people are doing and do the opposite. I think that's where a lot of people are, is they look at what everybody else is doing. Well, hell, I guess that's how we advertise in this industry, and that's what they do.
So it's not differentiated, it's be different.
Yeah.
Right. And go in the opposite. You know, when you were talking about creating connection, I mean, I had the pleasure of, being involved in Tony Robbins' businesses. And I remember Tony once said to us, he said, "What's the difference between me and everyone else doing what I'm doing?" He asked that question of all of us. And people gave different answers. And he's like, "Well, that's good if you're a corporate executive. That's good if this is right." He's like, "What happens when I walk down a hallway?" He said, "People come up to me and they start to tell me, 'Can I tell you a story of how what you said impacted my life and how it impacted my life?'" And it was profound for me when I first heard this. But as I watched what Tony does, Tony taught, back in those days, especially, he would say anything about what was going on in his life. He would talk just like, because he knew other people were going through that.
Right.
And he knew that, he's brilliant. So he knew that was going to be a connection point for them. And so the reason I'm bringing this forth is because I think a lot of people feel like they're going to be embarrassed if they share what's going on. Like, you recently had rotator cuff surgery. We were talking about that. I recently had a hip replacement. Like, we're two young guys talking about surgery, right? That type of thing. But it's something that I remembered, that you had that. And you remembered that I had that, and you asked me how I'm doing with it. And so we got talking about it. That's a bonding point.
Sure.
And so in our follow-up, we're trying to create bonding points with our clientele.
Yep.
But people don't tend to look at it that way. I think, Vance, and the reason I asked the question is I think it's their fear of rejection or fear of being exposed in some way. You know what I mean? Like,
Some level of embarrassment too, but I mean, I do a lot of keynote speeches and things like that, and I purposely seed the speech with different aspects of my life so that I will connect with certain segments of the audience. I do this in the home service businesses, but I'm more intentional with it with the speeches because I have a very short window to make connections with people. I got 45 minutes. And if I'm selling from stage, I really need to make connections because I need them to buy whatever it is I'm selling at the end of it. So I will, talk about the fact that I've been married more than once, because in the audience, there's probably a bunch of divorced people or people that have been married more than once. I make an instant connection with them. I'll make he's not really an idiot, but he can be. The fact I've got an idiot brother-in-law. Everybody's got an in-law that's an idiot, right?
Yeah.
So instant connection there. And I'll do that with 4 or 5 different things so that I can make a connection instantly with the members of the audience without having to literally go up to them, shake their hand, say, "Hi, my name's Vance." So if you want to make those connections, you've got to be able to be free with yourself and comfortable with yourself. I mean, nobody wants to know your shoe size. I mean, unless it's like absurdly huge, like a 17,
Right.
Which would be interesting. But you pick and choose the things that make sense in order to create that. And you use that in your follow-up. You use that in the creation of these connections. And I think that that's just, you know, it's what makes sales happen, is being genuine to who you are. You're not, I mean, yes, you need a script, but are you following a script, or are you genuinely talking about your service or product with the script as a guideline, but you're talking about it from your point of view, from a point of genuineness, I think.
Yeah.
And I am, if you haven't already noticed, I'm a little kooky. And I don't mind being kooky. I really don't. And one of the kooky things I did, I don't know if I told you this story or not. So when I was first getting started in the carpet cleaning business, we were trying to get commercial accounts. And there was this huge auto dealership. They had like 7 or 8 not properties. What do you call it? The
Dealerships. Yeah.
within the system. And we wanted them as a client. So I could never get a meeting with the general manager. So I sent him a steering wheel. No box. I just put a stamp and a sales letter, taped it to the steering wheel, and mailed it. The post office will send anything, by the way. A couple weeks go by, I didn't hear anything from him. I sent him a turn signal. Same thing. Just put a stamp on it, sales letter, taped it on there. Nothing. Finally, 2 weeks later, I sent him the butt end of a muffler. Not the long pipe part, but just the fat butt end part of it.
Yeah.
Stamp, sales letter. That was the one that did it. And he calls me up and he says, Vance, if I promise to have a meeting with you, will you stop sending me car parts? I said, yes. So this year, end of 2024, we just crossed the $700,000 mark in sales with this business.
That's awesome.
Now, had I stopped at the steering wheel and just given up, they would never have become a client. Had I stopped at the turn signal, they would never have become a client. How far was I willing to go? I think I had a rear view mirror or side mirror was going to be next. I probably would have gone 1 or 2 more parts. I was ready to spend about $1,000 on this campaign because I knew if we got them, it was going to be a big payoff. But that's just it. You need to know the lifetime value of your client, or and what are they worth to you over time, to know how much you can spend to acquire that client and not dump it all on the first touch, like the steering wheel.
Right.
So I know, so if I did it on the steering wheel, okay, that, steering wheel cost me, $50 plus the postage, some in it for 120. I know I still have, $880 left in the campaign.
Right.
To keep sending stuff until they reply.
Well, I think $1,000 to gain $700,000 back, is
great ROI.
Yeah, I think anybody would. What's interesting to me, Vance, is you're bringing up the prospecting part of this, and prospecting, people don't look at follow-up as part of prospecting either. They reach out. If somebody responds, they'll reach back out. But what you're talking about is building a relationship with somebody through prospecting, through the use of follow-up. And too many people give up way too early. And, I remember that old show, Family Ties, right? Where Urkel was constantly trying to get Laura to go out with him. And I think it took him 7 seasons or something before she finally got a date with him, right? But he was relentless in his follow-up. He was constantly trying to build a relationship with her. And eventually, they ended up dating and et cetera. Everything was happy. But people give up too early in their follow-up pursuits. And, I said, I was on a podcast yesterday and somebody asked me, basically the question was, how long do you follow up? And I said, well, I followed up for 2 years, every month for 2 years. And it landed me a little car company called NASCAR, and they were like, wow, what did you do? And I just stayed in touch every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
on a monthly basis, right? And so I think it goes back to we've got to create a connection with people. And then the emotional side, it's got to be somewhat personalized because they've got to be able to relate to it. So it's got to be relevant. And as you said, you can't just be out there throwing offers out because it has to be meaningful to them. I mean, the fact is that lady found something meaningful in her life through Emma doing the ballet or
Right.
doing the dance. So we never know what it's going to be either. And that's and you're also talking about being vulnerable in our own positioning to get out there and let people know we're real human beings because people like that. They like to know, like I was talking, I went through a horrific divorce when I was 57 and it wiped me out financially and I had to rebuild. And so I was talking to a lady who was 83 yesterday and she went through a horrific divorce and the same thing happened to her. And we just talked about it. Well, she ended up buying from me just because we talked about that.
Right.
So, it's one of those things that when we're selling, we shouldn't be afraid to continuously build a relationship with someone. I mean, Vance, don't we do this on a personal level if we want to, you talked about, I think it was the beaches, the babes, and the bars, or whatever it was, right? Right. But if you see the babe, right, and you're like, wow, she is like, I want to get to know her. Don't and she's accepting that. And then it's like you go out on a date, even if it's a cup of coffee, don't you follow up like to continuously keep the relationships,
Yeah. Right.
top of mind? Like, and by the way, I've done this research, and for anybody who doesn't know, the woman expects, demands that the majority of that initial follow-up is done within 24 hours.
Right.
And so I used to do this in live audiences, and they'd raise their hand, and they're like, "Listen, what about 2 days?" Hands would go down. 3 days, hands would go down. And I remember going, "What if he doesn't get back for at least 3, 4 days?" And I remember two women at once yelled out, "He's burnt toast!" Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The relationship's done. So speed is also important when we're building a relationship. So we want to follow up. And I love what you said because I think this encapsulates everything. It's like create and maintain emotional connections from people who have either bought from us or we want people to buy from us.
Right.
And that's selling.
Yeah.
I mean, that isn't what little kids do to us all the time, man. It's like when they're 2, 3 years old. I mean, they're creating such an emotional connection that we attend to all their needs.
Yep.
I mean, they're selling to us. And people don't they think it's not supposed to be that way going through. So yeah, last question. How do people like we talked about what you did, but if somebody's like sitting there going, all right, how do I craft a message? Like, because Disney's a master at this.
Mhm.
I mean, the podcast I did yesterday was from Australia, and the lady literally said to me, "I'm doing this podcast to gain additional business so that I can take my 2 4-year-old sons and my husband on a vacation in Florida to Disney World."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, this is from Australia all the way to here, right? What a connection. So, are there some like basic rules? Like we talked about some things, but like if somebody's going to sit and say, okay, I'm going to craft a follow-up piece, would you kind of give them an ABC like starting process?
For the prospecting or for the retention side?
Great question.
Sorry.
Let's go with the prospecting.
Yeah. So first and foremost, what I call moment zero, which is that first touch you have with the prospect, whether that's a phone call, an in-face meeting, website, whatever it is what is that moment zero? What is the emotion that you're trying to get them to feel when they discover you? So if you are an orthodontist and they come upon your page, is it relief that, oh my God, I finally found the guy that can straighten and whiten my teeth in 24 hours or whatever. It's that moment zero of aha,
Right.
I found the person that I'm looking for. Because if you can create that emotional connection at moment zero, they're not going to go, or there's a less likelihood of them going and shopping elsewhere. And then once you've got them there, now you need to have a campaign that is going to move them along the path to being a customer. So that can be as simple as phone calls or texts. It can be as extravagant as using something like the steering wheel. One of my favorites is if I'm doing cold outreach, is doing the foot in the door strategy, where we actually will mail out a rubber foot, and the title on the sales letter is "I'm just trying to get my foot in the door." And so that sends a little bit of, okay, I don't take myself too seriously.
Yep.
And who else is sending rubber feet through the mail?
Very few, if anybody.
Nobody, right? And I had one of my clients a couple of weeks ago. He didn't want to do the rubber foot thing, and I'm like, okay, you don't have to do that. He goes, but I just saw a replay. I don't know if you remember the Saturday Night Live skit with Christopher Walken and cowbell.
Yeah,
Everybody needs
cowbell.
more
Yeah.
cowbell in their life.
Mhm.
So he went out and he bought 15 cowbells, and he did a sales letter because everybody needs more cowbell in their life in reference to Christopher Walken thing. Sent out 15 of them. He got 6 responses, which is, what's that, 33%?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
One guy said, cute, but I'm not interested, which is still not a no. That's still just you put them into a follow-up. But 5 now are primed and ready. They gave him a meeting. Now, I told him, I said, don't blame the marketing if you don't get a sale, because the marketing worked,
Right.
right? So you created the moment zero. You got the meeting. Now it's up to you to go close the sale. I'm not a sales guy, so you take care of that. But we got the meeting. But you created that moment zero, that connection, like, okay, I got their attention. I'm not taking myself too seriously. And oh, they might actually need my services. So do something. I don't mind being goofy. Like I said earlier, I'm a little kooky, and if you're okay with that, you're going to separate yourself from all of the commodity industries out there. And I don't know where else you're going to get 33% response rate on cold
Full
traffic.
traffic, right? Yeah, and the interesting thing for me hearing this is whether he got only needed one sale, obviously, out of
Oh God,
that
yeah,
type of
yeah.
process, right? But the thing is he's memorable, right? Other people will tell about what they experienced with him regardless. So he's gonna get some PR out of the process, maybe, in a small group, but it's like, I was sitting around and some guy sent me, a foot in the door like you, right? And it's like, who did that? Well, Vance Morris, what does he do? Right. And then all of a sudden it's like, it starts the conversation and then you get a call here and there off that PR. So it's about being memorable because people remember. And and it comes down to that kind of, what's that, J.G. Wentworth, when they talk, people listen, or something like
Right.
that, right? It's like, so you don't need huge budgets to do this, is what you're saying. And what we're doing is we're following up with people. And then once we establish that relationship, we've got to continue to keep following up. And we want to do it in a different way that's not offensive. We're not biting the head off the bird like Ozzy, is claimed to do, right? But we are doing things that are somewhat entertaining and
Yeah.
talking about our own person and talking about what things are going on that are relevant in our life that is usually somebody else can relate to, then that keeps this conversation top of mind because we as human beings remember stories.
Right.
You just talked about the Christopher Walken, cowbell thing, right? That's a story. And so we remember stories. And what I'm hearing throughout all of your follow-up is you're creating stories of some sort. What did the dumb criminal do, right? It's a
Right.
story, right? All of these stories are going through and people are remembering these things. So therefore it's keeping you top of mind. And like the Christopher Walken thing. I'll be flipping through the channels someday, and then because they have all the old reruns of Saturday Night Live on there. The moment I run across that, whether I click on that Saturday Night Live episode or not, I'm going to remember this conversation,
Right.
right, about the
Yep.
Christopher Walken, Cowbell, and Vance, and it'd be like, oh, geez, Vance, I've got to talk to him, right? And so this is what I want people to catch out of this: that follow up is a common courtesy, and that follow up is the essential glue that keeps relationships, as you said, connected and have well-being to them.
Right.
It's that simple. I really thank you for being here, Vance, and sharing your knowledge on this.
Pleasure.
How do people know more about you, your company? Well, first of all, you have something coming up that I think people should really know about, which is next February.
Oh,
You're
yes.
doing a come to Disney for a 3-day live
So
event,
making
right?
the magic boot camp.
The Magic Boot Camp. Okay.
Yep.
And so folks, those of you who live in a cold area, it's in February. So tax write-off, going to February, Orlando, Florida, going to Disney. You're taking them through Disney too, right? Or parts of it.
Yes. Yep. It's actually out on Disney property. We'll be staying at the Grand Floridian, so their premier resort. And it is a deep dive into all things Disney, how they create the magic there. And it is designed to have you be able to adapt what Disney is doing into your business. So, I mean, unless you own a theme park, we're not trying to copy what Disney does. We're just
Right.
trying to adapt what they're doing into a home inspection business or a dentist or, what have you. And it's for 3 days, and we'll spend some time in the classroom. We'll spend some time in the theme parks. I've organized some truly one-of-a-kind experiences. I don't know if you've ever been on a 9-course wine pairing dinner, Doug, but we get to do one of those right in front of Cinderella Castle. Absolutely extraordinary. And at the end of it, the design of it is for you to have a blueprint on how to Disneyfy your business. So you'll have a roadmap when you get home Monday morning to start implementing stuff. And then it's got like 3 months of follow-up coaching with it, to keep you on track to make sure it wasn't just a nice vacation.
I didn't know about the 3 months of follow-up.
Yeah.
So folks, I'm going to tell you, check this out because the investment in this is pretty modest, right? I believe it is anyways. So if you want to know more about that, connect direct with you, Vance, or
yeah, you can connect with me. Deliverservicenow.com is the website. And I don't know if you want to put the link in the show notes for the
oh yeah,
event.
I'll definitely put the link in the show notes.
I'll send that to you.
And folks, if
And
you, or shoot me an email as well at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. Just put in the headline Disney and I'll make sure I forward it to Vance if you decide to do so. So there's your website. They want to get a hold of you directly. How did they do so?
Sure. Yeah, you can get me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Vance Morris there, the Disney guy. Or you can shoot me an email at vance@deliverprofitsnow.com.
Awesome. Vance, thanks so much for being here today. Once again, bring in your A+ game. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Doug.
All right. Create and maintain emotional connections with your prospects and your buyers. I'm going to say that again. Create and maintain emotional connections forever with your prospects and buyers. Many of you hear me talk about what I call R-bar, right? R-bar. Always be building a relationship. So many people talk about always be closing. No, 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 no. There is a time for a close, and a close is a natural extension of having a great relationship where there's a win-win outcome for you and them. That's really sales in a nutshell. You don't have to use all this NLP and things like that. And not that NLP is bad, but you don't need a lot of these tactics and techniques that people talk about. You need to understand what their budget, their authority, their network, all these things that are, building a win-win relationship. And so I thought Vance did an amazing job at this in the follow-up component of it. I highly recommend if you're interested in, going to the Disney, spot, if you will, having 3 days at Disney, learning about what Disney does in the back end. I highly recommend that you take Vance up on the offer. Again, it'll be in the show notes here. You can click on the link or just email me and Doug at ceosalesstrategies.com and just put in there, hey, Vance Disney, and I'll forward your information to Vance directly. If you would love to know more about follow-up, come to our masterclass. The masterclass runs monthly, ceosalesstrategies.com/stop the leak. And the reason we had stop the leak in there is because follow-up is the number one sales leak in a business. And when you do follow-up correctly, you can literally bump your revenue between 5 and 20%. That's what we see on average happening to companies. So anyways, check out Vance, check out the masterclass if you'd like to come. And as always, I always say this to you, and I sincerely mean this. Today, go out and sell something. Sell something to somebody that somebody needs. They want to solve a problem. They want to gain an opportunity. They want to get a goal. You help them cross that bridge from point A to point B. You win because they pay you. They win because they get what they want. It is the best sale in the world. Watch your discounting, because discounting is a form of causing you more work in the future. When you discount something down that you don't have to, you've got to make up for it in order to hit your true goal. And it's not just a 1-for-1 ratio. Sometimes you discount something down, you might have to sell 5 or 10 things to actually make up for that particular discount, because there's always a cost to sale. There's always expenses. There's always returns, and there's always some churn in the process. So factor all those things in. If you want to know more about anything we talked about, reach out to me directly at Doug at ceosalesstrategies.com. If you want to be a guest, or you know somebody who's a guest, because we have a lot of PR people who listen to this, send that out to youmatter, youmatter, at ceosalesstrategies.com. Until next time, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast saying, to your success.